Uh, Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the RCS Beef 2021 seminar. It's an absolute delight to welcome you here. For those who haven't met me, my name's David McLean. I'm Chief of Delivery, Chairman of RCS. I think this time last year, I bet you the Beef Australia board and definitely us were wondering if we were going to be here and if we were going to be able to have this conversation or if we're actually going to be looking online at each other. And I think it's fantastic to be here and to see such a huge amount of support for this. Hopefully you've had a chance, those of you coming in, there's that QR code. So if we're going to have questions, we will be trying to answer questions from the floor as well, but with a large group and just the time getting around, it gets a bit difficult. What we're going to talk about today is the outcomes of shifting to a more regenerative agriculture approach. That's the broad title that we've worked on and we're going to discuss. The million-dollar question that I think we need to start with around this: what is regenerative agriculture? What does that actually mean? And I think there's about 140 people here. If we were to ask each and every one of you, I would be extremely confident in saying that each of you would have a different interpretation on what this thing is. So I think it's worth just pausing whenever we're having conversations around regenerative ag to ask ourselves, well, what is it? And not more importantly, not what is it, what is your interpretation of it? What does it mean to you? Because at the end of the day, that's all that really matters, is what it means to you and how you look at it. Now, I've got a definition, and it all relates back to this little diagram here. So I know a lot of you have been through and done work with us, so you will recognise this little one here, this three-legged pot. Some of you are probably sick of us talking to you about it, but it's so important, that's why we keep on putting it up there. Your agricultural operation is like this three-legged pot. How effective you are, the outcomes that you see as a business comes down to how effectively you're managing your land, so your soil health, your grazing management, your ecosystem, how effectively you're managing your production system. We better talk about beef this week. So how effective are you at actually producing kgs of beef? And then how effective are you at managing your business? That's those three legs of the pot that hold up the pot, and then up in the pot is people, the most important component in your business at the end of the day. So we've got these four components: your land, your livestock, your business, and your people. And to me, when we're talking about regenerative agriculture and what that could mean, my definition of regenerative agriculture is an infinitely balanced three-legged pot. So it's that pot there, because what we don't want is to have these legs of the pot uneven. If the legs of the pot are uneven, what's going to happen to it? It's going to fall over, isn't it? And if it falls over, what's going to fall out? People. So we're going to start losing people out of agriculture, people out of our businesses. So we've got to balance this system out. So if we're going to have what I would call a regenerative agricultural practice or system, then I think we need to have an infinitely balanced three-legged pot. A way of doing things that evolves and changes with your current reality so that your business can still be here, not in your time, not in your kids' time, but in your kids' time. It's about thinking thousands of years down the track, and that's that infinitely balanced three-legged pot that we're looking for. And if we tie this with, and this is the bit I really want to impress on from my point of view, is that there's no point being in the green, having healthy land and your business and your ecosystem firing along if your business is in the red. That's not a balanced three-legged pot. We've actually got to be profitably leaving our country in better condition. So for us as an organisation, the principles that we work with all of you about and cover in our programs, the regenerative goal that we have is to profitably leave our country in better condition. That's the outcome that we're chasing. And I'm yet to meet somebody in agriculture that doesn't think that that's a pretty good thing to aspire to. Does that apply to you as a room? Yeah, fantastic. So some common questions that we keep on getting asked, and I know the whole RCS crew spread around Australia get asked these questions. Little things like, does investment in fence and water pay? I'm under financial pressure and actually can't afford to spend money on fences, but I'm going broke. How do I actually improve profit? Some of you would have asked yourselves those questions a number of times. Some of you might be asking yourselves those questions right now. In my opinion, the easy part is actually answering those questions. The answers to those, I feel, are very straightforward based on the fortunate experience that I've been able to have. The hard part, bridging across to this seminar, is to choose who out of the RCS network to ask to come and tell their story about their answer to that questions. So I'm absolutely delighted to have this panel of 5 different businesses and families to come and talk to us. And walking around this week at Beef Australia and running into so many wonderful people, I've run into so many people going, geez, you would actually really be good up here too. You've got a fantastic story. I would have loved to have asked you as well. So the hardest part for us was to working out actually how do we dwindle this down. And so I'm looking forward to hearing some stories. The 5 people we're going to be hearing from, first of all, we're going to have Maddy and Hugh Pursehouse. And then we're going to hear from Dan Lynch, Grant and Carly Burnham, Steve Wilkins, and then John and Jess Bidgood. Bit of perspective around where they're from. I'll jump out of the way so you can see this. So we've got Dan Lynch. He's got a couple of blocks up through the north. And then through northern to central Queensland, we've got a lot of the Minya properties, which Steve Wilkins looks for, as well as we've got Bidgoods, Burnhams, and then down into the south here is where Maddy and Hugh Pursehouse are based. So we've got a really good spread, and what we've tried to capture in terms of bringing these stories to you is to have a range of backgrounds, from people just starting to change the way that they're running their businesses to some people who have a little bit more grey hair on their head and been doing it for a little bit longer. We've got a mixture of corporate as well as family operations. We've got a mixture of locations, topography, rainfall patterns. And so I'm really looking forward to hearing the stories as they come through. Really delighted to, first of all, welcome Maddy and Hugh Pursehouse up to share their story. So as I mentioned, Maddy and Hugh, they live Blackville, which is down near Tamworth in central New South Wales. And rather than me say anymore, I'm going to hand over to you guys.
Good afternoon. Our vision: to create a healthy growing business, people, land, livestock and profits by implementing regenerative principles. We're a fun, passionate team, keen to learn and shift paradigms. We nourish ourselves and others with nutrient-dense food and open our minds to the idea of regenerating our soils, businesses and ourselves. The business decisions we make must align with our vision. After becoming parents to our gorgeous daughter Primrose in August last year, this was even more relevant to us. Not only creating a healthy environment for our family to grow up in, but a financially thriving business we can pass on to our kids in a better ecological state. I grew up in Sydney, and I feel lucky not to have been a generational farmer. After ag college, I worked within the ag industry, gaining experience until Dad and I decided to partner together to purchase our first farm in August 2016 on the edge of the Liverpool Plains at Blackville, New South Wales. I was introduced into Regen Ag through Rachel Treasure's books growing up, and this encouraged me to start asking questions about everything I was learning. Dad has been 100% on board with our regenerative journey. Even so much so, he's recently purchased his own property up the road, which we're currently managing as he builds his skills to take over for himself in the near future.
I grew up on my family's mainstream irrigation and dryland cropping property and cattle operation as well at Breezer on the Liverpool Plains. My passion has always been cattle, although I spend my time between 3 enterprises, as well as used to have a spray rig business on the side. Our cattle operation was a basic breeding operation, selling off as weaners. We moved cattle when convenient. There was not much planning involved, as the cattle enterprise was really seen as enjoyable, but came second best. For me to start thinking differently was due to Maddy constantly questioning the way we did things and why. This led to us doing grazing for profit in February 2017. I now work between both businesses. I manage the cattle enterprise at Breezer and spend half my week in the Blackville business. We decided it's slightly tricky to speak about 2 different businesses in a short period, so we've decided to speak on the Blackville business. Everything we've implemented over the years at Rossay, at Blackville, I've also done in the beef business at Breezer. It has been slightly trickier implementation at times due to having family with a different mindset, but results speak for themselves. I've also been able to run a few multi-species cover crop trials in our cropping enterprise with some good and interesting results, and yet to introduce livestock into these trials.
When we purchased Rossay, it was an incredible season with a high market. We purchased expensive well-bred cows and calves with the intention to have our own beef brand and purchased some trade steers to use the rest of the excess grass we thought we had available. In early 17, the season started getting dry, which led to a 3-year drought. We know for many of the areas this is a short stint, but for our area it was unheard of and something we definitely didn't plan for at the start of our journey. I remember feeling extremely overwhelmed, anxious and incapable, which was not only due to the fact I was running out of grass fast and the market was dropping quickly, but also due to not having a good handle on my figures. This was the start of a pretty epic learning curve. Over the past 5 years, we have done many courses and surround ourselves with some of the best in regenerative ag. Mentors have played a huge part in the successes we have had so far. We have made plenty of mistakes over the last 5 years, but it's through education and planning that ourselves, our businesses and our farms are in a much better place mentally, financially and ecologically.
Trying our best to look after ground cover, we slowly destocked all the trade cattle throughout 2017, and by the middle of 2018 we had to make the hard decision to sell our breeding mob. Our grazing chart and our budget were telling us to destock, but we were fighting against it with emotion and hope. We supplementary fed cattle for 6 weeks and then finally listened to our grazing chart, and in September we sold our breeders, which left us completely destocked. Although a tough decision at the time, we knew that feeding cows did not fit our vision. It did not benefit us ecologically, financially or mentally. If we had listened to our grazing chart and sold earlier, the market would have been stronger and we would not have caused the ecological damage we can still see on parts of the property now. After destocking, we were now open-minded to look and think of the opportunities we were missing while getting bogged down in the dry. In every drought, it still rains. We had left behind a fair balance of ground cover, and even a small amount of rain would encourage our pastures to respond quickly. Using the Myer grazing forecast tool, we would work out how many LSUs we could run to match our stocking rate to our carrying capacity. We knew we could confidently feed budget up to 3 months ahead of us with no rain forecasted. We would then go out and purchase underpriced animals that suited that feed with a 60-day forward contract. In a nutshell, we would not purchase animals unless we knew we could finish the trade with no rainfall. During this time, the majority of people around us were still spending money feeding cattle and degrading their ecological assets. Although our turnover was low, we were still making significant profits per trade, with cows averaging 1.2 kilo daily gains, and we're able to start paying down our overheads and interest bills instead of increasing our direct costs. Throughout the rest of 2018 and 19, this is the strategy we followed. During this period, we were also able to purchase our neighbouring property to slowly start expanding our business, which gave us the ability to increase our stock numbers. Yes, that's not farming country, but it's not ours either.
We are now grass farmers and we use animals as a tool to make money. We trade full-time using the KLR principles, which has removed all emotion, and that gives us the ability to quickly destock to look after our grass inventory and match our stocking rate to our carrying capacity. It has also created flexibility to be able to buy the class of stock that will match the grass that we have available. We use low-stress stock handling techniques and spend a lot of time with each incoming mob to make sure they're in a good headspace before joining their new friends in a paddock. We want our animals to live in a stress-free environment, which will in return help our bank balance by performing well while they are there with us. We spend a lot of time observing our soil and our grass, feed budgeting, planning our moves and monitoring. The myograzing software enables us to track our sells and buys, the number of LSUs we're carrying and the ability to plan forward. The forecasting tool helps me write our budgets and has become an integral part of our system. I really do believe you cannot measure what you don't manage. In 2020, we hit jackpot and the rain started. Our property bounced away quickly, and before long, we needed to ramp up fast to make the most of the grass and keep it in the growing phase. With the market rising quickly and feeling a little nervous, we started buying small amounts of cattle and took on a large amount of adjustment from local people who had fed through the drought and their properties had not responded in the same way. Taking on adjustment was due to two reasons. Firstly, due to not having the capital to fully stock the property, we were patiently waiting for an extension in our overdraft, something we should have done much earlier. And secondly, we thought it was a good risk management strategy entering a quickly rising market.
When it rains, it pours. We've really noticed the weather patterns changing. We seem to get hit with huge rainfall events and then months of very little. We need to be able to capture as much of this rain as possible. Through sequestering carbon and building a healthy soil, we've seen fascinating results. Several times whilst driving during a rain event, I have noticed gullies and creeks running on the surrounding properties, but for some reason ours weren't. After large falls, we still do get some runoff, but we have found no silt over our roads, which is a great indication we are restoring our ecosystem and our water holding capacity is increasing. We have split many of our paddocks up and now run 83 paddocks on Ross Day. We use planned grazing and only re-enter paddocks once the grasses we want to graze are recovered. The use of wire and water to split paddocks has removed overgrazing from the sweet spots and the paddocks are becoming more even and diverse. We run large mobs to create high density and to increase our rest period. We have seen the diversity improve with the increase of more desirable species. This gives our animals a larger salad bar to graze on. We have also fenced out our degraded creeks and built some leaky weirs to encourage Mother Nature to repair them. We use trampling of animals' hooves and dung to help with the repair process as well as having adequate rest. We've been extremely excited about the results of slowing water down to keep as much on our farm as possible.
This graph has been pulled out of myograzing and explains what we're seeing in the paddock. Our yearly rainfall and our stock days per hectare is then brought back to per 100 mils to make it relative. In 2018, our stocking rate was largely exceeding our carrying capacity. We were uncomfortable, and that shows in these figures there. At the end of 18 was when we destocked, and you can see in 2019 we really took a hit for that mistake. The exciting story here is our figures are heading in the right direction, and even though our rainfall has tailed off this year so far, we're still sitting very comfortable with the stock numbers we have on. Planning, monitoring and managing and knowing our financial figures helps us feel in control of all parts of our business. The more water we capture, the more grass we can grow, the more animals we can run, the more money we are making.
my only disadvantage I've found in our regenerative journey is the fact I always end up with bugs, spiders and grass seeds all over my buggy and myself because I'm always driving an abundance of feed. We cannot thank RCS and a few other people in this room for the help and education throughout our journey, as it wouldn't have been possible without you. Thank you.
So can we get that QR code just put back up there for a moment, please, Rob? So the first question that I'd like to ask you guys, with the changes that you've made, you made some big decisions there, and your decision during those seasons to fully destock when a lot of other people were choosing a different management strategy. If you look back there now with the benefit of hindsight, financially, what are the outcomes for you choosing to look after your land rather than hold on to those genetics, which you were pretty proud of?
Very significant. Basically when we, through Executive Link, which we've done for the last 3 years, we do BPSs, so we basically have to track our financials every 4 months, three times a year for the last 3 years. And it's just been incredible to see that increase over that time. And it basically all comes down to making those hard decisions and destocking and basically being able to restock earlier and continue that.
And another question, an interesting one for you. So coming from an urban background and then marrying into a non-urban background there, different sets of paradigms, would that be fair enough at the start? So how did you work with that when you're both coming at it from different direction? How have you got here to be at this stage? And I still can't believe that you got up and talked this much, mate. That's impressive. So how did you manage that differing of ways to do it? Because I don't know whether anybody else in the room ever encounters that where you've got couples with differing opinions. Is that just them or? Right. So how have you managed that when you've got those different paradigms and different approaches? Is there any comments on what's made it work so far?
There's always been a few arguments. I guess when Maddie just kept questioning that we were doing sort of conventionally, it makes you start thinking outside the box. And through doing the grazing for profit course, it gets you thinking, and went on from there.
I would say I didn't change his mind, you guys did. I tried for a long time. And he thought I was an idiot. I think it's fair to say. But once we did grazing for profit, he walked out of that and said, I'm going to do next steps on my own business. And that was him, not me. So, it's definitely been challenging, and as Hugh said, we've had a few arguments along the way. But I'm so impressed that he's come this far, and it's not without you guys.